Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp of the Lent, and I'm back with the final part of 1985 Under an Iron Sky. I have really enjoyed covering this game. I've had a lot of fun with it. We're going to go over a final few aspects and then some final thoughts. All right, so like I said in the previous video, we're going to look at reinforcements, but before we touch on reinforcements, I want to look at replacements because they're actually two different things. Let me grab a sequence of play here, and when you're looking at it, you notice that it says Warsaw Pact reinforcement phase and then the replacement phase. That's definitely two different things that you need to keep track of. All right, so reinforcements are these guys. All right, these are the ones that are going to come in from off map. These are like full units ready to go, all that good stuff. Those are your reinforcements. Replacements are when you actually have step losses on the board or on your aircraft here in your airfields, and you're bringing steps back to those guys. Those are replacements. I want to touch on replacements first, even though it's second in there because it's a little bit quicker. All right, so when we look at our scenario booklet here, get it in the light, you notice when we look at the NATO side, nothing there about not reinforcements, replacements. The only ones in this scenario that I have set up that get replacements are the Warsaw Pact. They have some MIG points that they can spend. They don't accumulate round to round. They have to use them or lose them on these air points. And these are basically points that they can spend to repair aircraft squadrons that have lost steps, all right? Not the ones that are damaged, the ones that have lost steps. But let me turn to a bigger campaign to show you guys something. All right, so this is campaign 1. There's, I think, a couple of campaigns in this game. And man, these things are just massive. God, I wish I had the time to set this whole damn thing up. My next kid will be born. Hell, my 5th kid would be born before I got this thing set up. It's just so big and awesome. The whole map is used for this thing. But just kind of watch this as I flip through the pages. These are the Warsaw Pact forces that are set up on the whole map. I mean, look at that. Look at it. Tell me that's not intimidating right there. Just flip the damn pages. All right, so here it flips over. These are the reinforcements. They're going to come in. We'll keep going. And boom, now we've just hit NATO forces. But here we go. Where's it at? All right, let me turn it down and get this into the light so I can show you guys right here. Warsaw Pact replacements. Because remember, replacements are different than reinforcements. So right here, it lists down Warsaw Pact receives ground replacements according to the following schedule. Turn 10 until the end of the game, 2 replacement points per turn, and then Warsaw Pact allies. So not the Soviet Union. Soviet Union gets 2. The rest get 1 replacement point after turn 10 and onwards. Now, the air reinforcements are listed down separately, all right, from the rest of them. And NATO is going to be very similar. Let's see how many points they get for their campaign. Their replacements, they get, and it lists down by nationality here. Let's see, West Germany gets turn 6 until the end of the game. 2, that's not bad. France doesn't need any replacements. They weren't even in the game to begin with. USA turn 16, 15 replacement points. That's pretty good, but that's just like a one-time boost. Probably signifying like they sent in massive amounts of forces and just like a big wave. United Kingdom, turn 16 until the end of the game, 1. Italy, 16 until the end of the game, 1. So for USA, they should probably go at it in this first campaign hard so they get to use those points because there's only, what, like 9 turns left in the game by turn 16? That means United Kingdom and Italy are only getting 9 points compared to the USA's 15, but the USA gets it all in one go. Interesting, really interesting. I like that. But you see how this is how replacements are going to work. There is a section in your rule book that covers the rules for ground replacements and the air replacements, which is Warsaw Pact. Obviously, I went over that. Can't be accumulated. They have to use them or lose them. And same thing for the ground replacements. Actually different. They can be accumulated from turn to turn if not immediately used. And in order to receive replacement points, a unit must be in general supply and not adjacent to enemy units. It lists down all the different requirements to bring a unit back up to snuff. Things like for a brigade or regiment size unit, it costs 1 point, but for removing a step loss from a division size unit, it's going to cost 3 replacement points. Obviously, the bigger the unit, the more it's going to cost to bring them back up. But remember, they are listed down in your player aid. A nice little example showing the different sizes of the unit, so you can keep track of how big the unit is, know how many points you got to spend. Okay, so I went over all that, the replacement points first because they're a lot easier to understand. The bigger the unit, the more points you're going to spend. Depending on your scenario, it's going to tell you how many you get, and they obviously have to be in supply and communication, all that good stuff, to be able to get refit, and they can't be actually in combat with an enemy. Basic stuff. The reinforcements are a little bit different. They're a little more convoluted on how they're going to be handled. So again, if we look at our scenario booklet here, let me pull this out of the way. If we look at our scenario booklet, like our NATO reinforcements here, these are the units that are going to come in. And it's easy to understand looking here. This is the deployment, right? So where they're going to deploy. But you see on these guys, they don't have a deployment hex. They have some type of code and then a number. Generally, the number is going to be the turn in which they deploy, that they can be deployed out. Exceptions would be something like this, the U.S. mechanized unit here, which is P2. The P2 is actually the code, and then the 5 is what turn it would come in. I'll use that one as an example here in just a sec. All right, so the way the code thingy is going to work is when you get into your reinforcements, there's a set standard for just normal reinforcements, and then what's called variable reinforcements, and then all these codes listed down designating who they are. But if you keep flipping through this, it lists down for each one of the different nations. So Polish, Hungarian, Czechoslovakian, East German. And let's flip over again. Soviet reinforcements, Warsaw Pact mobilization, Austrian reinforcements, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Italy, Netherlands, UK, US. You see how all of this is listed down. I can't cover all of this in detail. I just wanted to kind of highlight this to you and give you an example of how it's going to work. Looking at your U.S. reinforcements here, U.S. ground reinforcements marked with a PN code. They're going to follow rules for the Reforger. And list Reforger down here, which was this POMKIS thing that they did. And it had to do with, basically, they had the equipment for certain units already staged in West Germany, ready for when the war kicked off, so they could just basically deploy the guys there and they could just pick up their stuff and go. We'll deploy one of those guys out so you guys can see how that works, but that's how these codes work. You're going to have to look it up for each one of the different units to see what special rules apply, and especially when it comes to NATO units, this is where that North Atlantic battle comes into play, because it can affect when the units get deployed. It can either push them forward, pull back. Let's see, pull this player out. All right, remember when I talked about this at the beginning of the game? This is the North Atlantic battle chart, and it has lots of different modifiers on it that can potentially affect deployment. All right, so let's look down here as an example. North Atlantic lanes interdicted. NATO GA, GB, NO reinforcements canceled. NATO PN, CS reinforcements plus 2 turns. NATO CA reinforcements plus 1 turn, right? So there's a lot going on with this that can affect what's going on with this. There's just too much for me to cover. So I wanted to just show you guys a couple of quick, little examples, but go over this so you understand where all this information is coming from so you can find it when you're playing the game. Okay, so just looking at this as an example here, grabbed a couple out. I grabbed one of our CAs, I think it was a CA3. that I grabbed as the reinforcements to put out, and then the P25 as a reinforcement. All right, so if we look at our 2 air forces, and come on, light, get with me here, as our 2 air guys here. Hold on, let me get my light right so you guys can see this. You see this one is a F-15C, and there on the right side it says CA3. That's CONUS Air 3. So turn 3, and it's going to follow rules for things coming from CONUS, continental United States, by air. Essentially for this, that just means that it's going to go to any airfield that is U.S. controlled, has to be a U.S. airfield that's in supply, in communication, hasn't been damaged or taken over by enemy units. You would take and plop your reinforcement down there. Remember, for our specific scenario, these reinforcements are actually victory points. So be a little bit different depending on if you want to keep them out or not. Now, looking at this other guy here, you see that is the P25, all right? So that was, I forget what the P stood for, but basically it was that reinforcement in place stuff, the POMCUS, so POMCUS reinforcements, and they are on the board. You guys can see here, P3, P2, P1, I think there's more up here, yep, P4, P6, P5, all over the place. This one is P2, so it would be deployed here as long as, obviously, certain things, it's not surrounded by enemies or, enemy zone of control, that all good stuff. If it's turn 5, you would put him there. Now, this is one of those things that I think you could probably get used to with a little bit of time in game, especially if you're playing like a campaign game. You probably quickly, after the first turn or two, remember what GA reinforcements do, what CA reinforcements do, and the same with Warsaw Pact, what their different codes do. But that's definitely going to be a little tedious in the first couple of turns when you're learning this game, all the little special rules that go into it, because there are a fair amount in the rule book on all of these. Not to mention the fact any adjustments that can be made because of that North Atlantic battle that's happening. So when you are doing your reinforcements, make sure you do that step very slowly, very methodically, to ensure that you are doing it right and accounting for any modifiers or adjustments that have to be made. All right, so some quick down and dirty final thoughts for the game. All right, this game's a beast, no doubt, no question about it. This game is one hell of a beast. I have not played a game like this when it comes to the fictional World War III type scenario of NATO versus Warsaw Pact, but it is awesome. I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong, but this is one that is not for the faint-hearted, right? You absolutely have to be willing to go digging into that rule book time and time and time and time and time again until you get the little steps memorized and where everything goes. Because like I said, each individual piece is not hard when it comes to this game. It's fairly easy to learn how air superiority works, how interception works, how flak works, how ground support works. But you get what I'm saying, that each one of those pieces affect each other. And you have to worry about that being performed differently when you're bringing in your jet fighters versus your helicopters. They're going to be handled a different way. And then not to mention all the ground forces and the way that they interact with each other when it comes to fatigue and being able to push them farther. Even artillery. The artillery supports, this range for the attacker, but this range for the defender. It's all the small pieces interacting with each other. Each one of the small pieces is easy to understand, but it's when you put them all together that it really does become complicated. Like even the reinforcements that we were just talking about, each one of the little pieces of reinforcement, the POMCUS stuff. And I know someone's going to be laughing at me in the comments about the way I'm describing that crap. The way it's handled, it's not hard to figure that out, but you've got that to worry about. So you've got all the special rules for U.S. forces, and then British forces, and then French forces, and then these German forces, those German forces, Soviet forces. That's what I'm saying. It's a whole bunch of tiny little things that add up to this just gigantic pyramid, almost inverted pyramid that you have to try to wrap your mind around. And I'll just be flat out honest with you guys. This game is absolutely not for everyone. It really is not for the faint-hearted. You have to be willing to do all the stuff that I was talking about. You really have to be willing to get stuck into a game like this and devote your time to it. I mean, it's been on my table for weeks, and I can't tell you how many. I think I spent at least a couple of weeks before I even started filming, just reading through the rule book over and over and over again, going over the different facets of it. And even still, I made mistakes when I was filming that, Fabrizio was nice enough to point out to me. There's just a lot going on here, and I haven't even covered anywhere near everything that this game has to offer. The seed missions, it's the surface interception, something. Suppression of enemy air defenses. That's what it is. Seed missions that you can do, the wild weasel missions that you can do, the special forces, the nuclear artillery, the nuclear missiles, the special munitions, all that type stuff. I didn't even cover transport missions, ferrying the special forces around. So many different things going on. And that's on top of all the just the basics of combat that I've laid out for you. And then, like I said, imagine this. This is just one map. Multiply this by 3, and then a couple little addendum pieces that attach onto that. So I showed you guys in the scenario booklet all those masses of forces that you have to account for. Setting up this game, it would take you hours. I'm not going to lie. If you set up a campaign game, even if you are organized, you have all the units and some nice counter holders, divided out by type and nationality and all that good stuff, it would still take you hours to set this up. I mean, it's nothing that a real war gamer is not going to know. A game like this is going to take time to set up. You just need to be aware of that fact. This one is absolutely a labor of love. You really need to be invested in it before you start dumping the time into it. Not to mention the fact that it is expensive. It's roughly $200, $190 or so, depending on where you get it. And I still think it's out of print. They might be doing another running. I know they've got another in the series and then a couple more that they have going on as well. So there are options out there for you to get it besides just eBay, I do believe, but don't quote me on that. Now, strictly speaking, when it comes to the components what you get for what you're paying, the components are not bad by any means. Any wargamer standard, the paper maps are perfectly fine. The counters are fine. Like I said, my one niggle is just the way that they're cut. You do have to clip them. At least I have to clip them. It'll drive me crazy otherwise. Forgive me, I've been talking for a while. My voice is starting to give out on me. The counters are fine. The player aids are perfectly fine. Thickness, the other booklet player aid, perfectly fine. There's 3 maps, 2 little small maps, multiple player aids, a couple of the book player aids, and then 2 big rule books that come with it, and then obviously the dice. The cost of this game is a little above what you would think you would pay for those amount of materials, but I think a lot of what you're paying for is the research, the time, the effort, the blood and the sweat that has gone into this game, because I know they really did their homework before they put this together. They tried to, represent it as accurately as possible. And that is where I think a fair portion of the cost does come from. But truth be told, I think that's really not going to affect it as much, because if you've watched the series, at least up to here, you obviously already know whether or not this is a game for you. If you're willing to watch the series trying to learn this game, you already know it's a game for you. Or the first video, it might have turned you off already. So the cost, I really don't factor in it too much on it, because this is like what I describe it as in the first video, the caviar of war games. It is one of those higher end ones, the one that you're proud to have on your bookshelf, and you look at it and like, oh yeah. And especially if you've actually played it, actually had the whole damn thing spread across the table and out there, then that's something you can really be proud of. Look at yourself and, put a Callendale medal on and say, hey, I did it. So yeah, this one, it's a good one. I don't recommend it for cats, people who have cats or young children, unless you have a place you can tuck this away. If you got a garage, a playroom somewhere you can lock the door, and a very, very, very big table, because my table is just big enough to fit it if I have absolutely nothing else on it, and it would cover everything. And I mean like everything. If I had the whole map laid out and then the player aids obviously that I needed and that type stuff, I would absolutely be covering this table. I think it's 6 by something feet, 6 by 4 feet, 6 by 6 feet. Forget it. I've got a couple of tables put together. So you got to have the space. You got to have the will to get into this one. But yeah, if you're into the World War III scenarios, this is definitely one you should absolutely check out if you get a chance to, if you've got the money to do it. I would absolutely recommend it. If you want that deep game experience, this one will absolutely 100% give it to you. But if you don't want to be digging in the rules, if complex games aren't for you, this is 100% pass, because you will be buried in the rule book. I handed it to my wife and her eyes just glazed over like, nope, hell no, never. I would never do that. I couldn't pay her to play this one. Anyway, I do hope that you guys enjoyed this series. It really was, a labor of love for me. I definitely spent a lot of time trying to get this to the table and do it as right as possible, because I know a lot of people wanted to see this. And if there are any others that are like this, the big game or the complex game that you guys are curious about that maybe others haven't covered as much, that you'd like me to see, me do a more in-depth coverage of, feel free to put it down in the comments. Let me know, and I'll try to touch on some of those as well. All right, but that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Y'all take care. I'll see you in the next one.